gain, you can say we will be able to do. When we're in an uncertain position, we're going to be much more likely to argue what the loss is because of the uncertainty in it. Now, if we take a technology example for the gain, and on this one, underground storage tanks has sometimes provided this kind of thing, so that might be the easy one to think of, is that if we have a new technology available for leak detection, and let's assume that it is being allowed by the regulations as well, is that it is now going to be, on specific example number 2, that we'll be able to use this component in these systems. That's a gain. We will be able to do that. So it's relatively certain because the advance in technology is something that is certain, and once it's allowed and listed and whatever, then we are certain we'll be able to use it. That's certain. We're going to frame it in a positive way. When we are in fluctuation on the loss side, so our laws and regulations are in fluctuation, which right now on the underground storage tank side, Title 23 is going to be rewritten for the new federal rules. Then we start talking about on the loss side. We may not be able to, what? Agencies may not be able to have the authority to enforce something we used to do. We may not be able to allow the previously authorized stuff. We're not sure. So it's in fluctuation. We're uncertain. So when we're uncertain, we tend to frame things in a loss scenario. So what you want to associate is certainty. We like certainty, right? Everybody here, you like certainty? Pretty much, you feel more comfortable if you're certain about things. Certainty, we're going to tend to describe with gain. Uncertainty with loss. And so the question you can ask is, what outcome what is the outcome? Is the outcome fairly certain? Or the nature of the outcome, is it fairly certain? Or right now are you in an uncertain? And that will give you an idea of pretty much whether you're framing things in terms of gain or loss. And it kind of makes sense because how do you describe a gain when you're uncertain about what that's going to be? And I think it's one of the major challenges we're having on the SIR side right now. Is how can we go forward? I know in our agency we're talking a lot. Nancy right here is our main person for that. And we're having a difficult time going forward with our business outreach stuff because what do you want to describe? You want to describe your gain stuff. We're in such a world of uncertainty, it's very difficult to do right now. So let's go through though. I want to make sure because this is while it's not complicated, it's an important concept, and I want to make sure that we can do one more of these. So help me out here, and we're going to go through what is something else in Coupa world that you know of where the outcome at this point seems to be fairly certain, that we could describe what the gain is going to be. I should have started with the uncertain. There's so many more of those, but what is something, and it could be something at your local level. Has anybody passed an ordinance or done something that's going to give them something fairly certain? Or you've done something at TAG or something that is fairly certain that you can describe what the gain's going to be.
This may be somewhat controversial, but we're going to follow your model, Marilyn. We're trying to anyway, of CO2 tanks and the 1,000,
So you're passing an ordinance.
Passing an ordinance that would raise the bar to 1,000 versus, I can't remember what it is right now, so businesses that were previously regulated because they had tanks that were that size would not be, because we think the risk is minimal.
Okay. So in that case, what we're talking about on the it's fairly certain because we passed an ordinance. San Bernardino County passed an ordinance, and so I can describe ours, and if the situation's similar, we passed an ordinance that says that at 1,000 cubic feet for beverage CO2 in our case, and we actually have helium for balloons in another one, that we are not going to require disclosure. It's an ordinance, so it is certain at this point in our case. So it is certain that we're going to do that, so we can describe it as a gain that those facilities, we will not need to do the gain for us is that we won't have to do disclosure on that. It will reduce the regulatory burden on those facilities. That's described as a gain. I know that's negative language in some ways, but it reduces the regulatory burden. That's the gain. Reduces the regulatory burden on those facilities and on our agency because we are not going to need to do disclosure on those facilities. Right, okay.
So there's no risk involved to the public by taking this action.
As a result, as the way we have framed it, there's no risk. Yeah, the way we have framed it is that action didn't involve an unreasonable risk. Yes. So that gain. Now, probably a lot easier to do the other one. What's an area of uncertainty in Koopa land? Any one of the millions of them. Feel free to choose one. Any area of uncertainty.
Cali PA audit.
Cal EPA is coming into town. It's coming for us in April. Cal EPA is rolling into town, so that's the outcome has uncertainty, so what is the potential loss?
Could lose the program, but that's an extreme example. You got a really bad program.
Right, so the potential outcome, Cal EPA is coming to town is the real uncertainty is we may lose a bunch of staff time trying to defend our deficiencies. Frankly, that's in our case what I know what the loss would be, is that our reputation is at risk. We may have to defend our positions, and we may lose a lot of staff time and credibility if we can't, and we don't know what their questions they're going to ask. But we're probably going to frame that one as the agency may not be able to defend its positions. The agency may not be able to produce the records that are necessary. The agency may not be able to. It's probably going to be framed as a loss thing because we don't know what they're going to ask. And that kind of thing. It's uncertain what they're going to. Now, there might be some things about the evaluation that are certain. We know they're going to be asking this, in which case we can frame it positively is that we know that they asked this and we will be able to do this because we know that this is what Cal EPA expects when they come, and therefore we will be able to provide them those records. And that's a good example of one that has both positive gain and loss framing possible. It is not always an either or.
Right. It depends on what your end objective is, using that illustration. One that I provided earlier was the National Center for Environmental Health, which is part of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. They own the lead program. And back when the whole conversation about what was going to happen with the lead program before it was cut most of its budget, the way NCEH was framing it is, it's unclear what's going to happen to this, but if it were to be cut, here are the kinds of negative consequences that were associated with that. If, in fact, there was strong political support for the lead program, then we could have said, by having that lead program, look at all these benefits. We're going to enroll 400,000 more children, the IQs of these kids, they'll get through school, and all the benefits associated with that. By the way, the negative framing of the lead program, it didn't work. Okay, it still got cut like 95% or more. But that's an illustration of how that plays itself out within Washington, D.C. The key players within the National Center for Environmental Health made the rounds inside the Beltway, communicating to anyone that they could about how the lead program was at risk. And as environmental health professionals, we should be really distraught. And my guess is most no one in this hotel even knows what I'm talking about. I mean, because the lead program is somewhat isolated by itself. I mean, it's a real tragedy what's happening within public health in those particular circumstances right now. But thanks for walking through some of those illustrations for us. If you want to, at the break, and we have to take a break here, I think in about 10 minutes. If you want to talk about some other specific illustrations on the tactics and the strategies of using this kind of approach, we could certainly do that. It's not a guarantee it's going to work, but I think it's in terms of thinking how you're going to present your information and make your case, this potentially is useful for you. I like this illustration, which comes from the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. Now notice the way that they have framed this particular situation about urban renewal, right? You could say a lot of crappy stuff about urban renewal. I mean, if you look at different aging cities and the infrastructure here within North America. And the way that they presented this, I think, is absolutely brilliant. As empty nesters and singles outpace the growth in households with children, the region is seeing an increasing demand for walkable, low-maintenance communities conveniently located to shops, jobs, and recreation. Where, how, and whether we will meet this demand are key questions for the future. You notice the lofty ideals that are presented here in this particular promo, and how they've actually drilled down walkable. That's quite tangible, right? I mean, so you know what they're talking about. Low maintenance communities, I'm not even sure what that is, but that sounds sexy to me. And conveniently located to shops and jobs and recreation. So I thought that was good. As we kind of wrap up this first segment this morning, the whole issue of the evolution of framing in people's minds are presented on the slide, which I've borrowed from Gene Ryder, where, in fact, the first thing this morning you may have said to yourself, framing, what is that? It doesn't exist. It's not germane to me. And I promise you, and I wish I could follow up with each and every one of you, here over the next month or two, you'll start to see framing everywhere you go. And until I was sensitized to it. And then probably where you're at right now is paralysis. It's like, what does all this mean? You'll start to assimilate it at some point in time. It will be awkward at first, and then you'll begin to integrate and then become conversant in framing. For those of you that are moving up in your trajectory of your career, I encourage you to take some time to read articles. Again, I can share those with you if you have an interest in this. But this whole idea of controlling the conversation, controlling the thought process, which is really what this is about, is absolutely vital to each and every one of us in our careers. And in fact, Dr. Surratt, if I had to go back to Loma Linda and give one talk, it might be around something like this, how you think about issues and how you present those. And then as we wrap up, I want to share with you a couple of photos. And I would like you just to take 30 seconds, and I won't say anything for 30 seconds, and focus on these. The picture on your left is a collage that I put together from some of my experiences here over the last year. And on the right-hand side is a picture from Port-au-Prince in Haiti. And my question to you as you look at these photos and really look at them, which of these photos are much more likely to inspire you to do something, to act on something, to move ahead in your life where you take some responsibility for any of this? And what is the frame that really, do you think, brought you to the point of reaching that conclusion? And I would like to, I know some folks are hesitant to talk, I'd like you to share what you think about these pictures. So let's take 30 seconds out, take a look at it, and let's talk about what you're thinking. Okay, anyone want to share their thoughts?
Before you start, it's very hard to see what on the right-hand, upper right-hand side on the left, what are those, the photos?
Oh, those are photos of vegetables. taken from a community in Rwanda where we were trying to encourage local communities to have community gardens, not unlike what we're doing right here in the U.S. all over in urban areas. And that's what's in the top right. Just below that is a trash pit which exists in Port-au-Prince. This is a picture I took not far from a refugee camp that my organization was managing. And that little bag, can you see the bag with water in it? Anyone ever seen that before? Really fascinating. In Haiti, those bags are used in restaurants to scare away flies. And there's different hypotheses on why that works. Now, I didn't do an empirical study. There's plenty of flies in Haiti, I promise you. And the restaurants we ate at that had these didn't have them. So I'm not sure. I'm not weighing in on whether or not they're effective. All I know is anecdotally, I was chuckling. It's like, wow. There's sometimes folks would suggest that the flies can see themselves magnified through these bags and they scare themselves away, right? And so I don't know. Okay, so that was, that's a collage of different things. And at the bottom there in the center, you can see the remnants of the tidal wave, the tsunami that affected Chile. This was a couple years ago. And my daughter was down there doing some translation work with a sister campus there. But can you share which of those photos do you think, as working professionals, which of those do you find more inspirational? And if it's neither one, that's fair as well.
Anybody willing to share?
I would say the left-hand one is much more inspirational because it's actually individuals. It's the implementation level. You can see where you're going to go to. The right-hand picture to me is very overwhelming. There's just so much work to be done. It's like, where do I even start? So that's my take on it.
Okay, thanks. So the right side is the overwhelming side. Yeah. How about one other person, just to share what your perceptions are?
I would say the one, the collage one, with the children, because like when you see the picture, you look at the human perspective of the picture, and you think about like what's happening with the world, what's happening with the children, and like the malnutrition like that, and we're looking at the children as our future. So I would say it's more inspirational on that one.
Hey, you notice his frame, children as the future versus just hungry kids, right? Different ways of thinking about this. How about one more, and then we'll wrap up.
Anybody else?
I know you all have opinions. In the back row there, on the right.
Oh. Thanks.
I actually was thinking, depending on what was going in my personal life, whether I was in a happy mood or a sad mood, they're both equal. Because one, the left focuses on positive, what, you can do, what's already done or what's good, and the other one is specific to a disaster. So you could either relate back to saying life is good, life is comfortable, I can help promote it more, and then on the right is, wow, something really bad happened, I'm really lucky I wasn't there, let's inspire to help fix it. So I think they're equivalent.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to now describe to you what the experts in this field suggest. And again, these are my photo. Well, no, the one on the right, I think I ripped off from National Geographic. That's not my photo. But I've got a boatload of those. What the experts in this field say is initially when you see these photos, sympathy may be evoked from that photo on the left where you see the kids. There's that immediate pull on your heartstring. But actually, it's the photo on the right, or photos like that, that inspire you to do something different. And that is, and I'd like to give you an illustration as we break for coffee. And that is, most of you are familiar with Save the Children, right? You remember as a kid, they had the ads on TV, and for 10 cents a day, you could, or $1 a day, whatever, you can send this kid to school and feed this child. And you know what Save the Children discovered is that Americans have become somewhat thick-skinned relative to that approach. They become callous. And now if you look at what organizations like Save the Children do when they're trying to raise money, they no longer have pictures like the one on the left of the cute little children out in the village. They have pictures similar to what you see on the right because it appeals to individuals' long-term commitment to something, to improve systems. And to remember, we talked about the big, broad values and principles, and when we were talking about framing, that really resonate with folks. If you want to raise some immediate money, maybe the picture on the left is the one that you will invoke sympathy contributions. If you really want people to buy into your organization and to contribute over time, frankly, it's photos like they would tell you, it's the photo on the right that really inspires folks. Now, if you go to the Save the Children website, I think it's Save the Children, they have a little ad there called Where Good Goes. And they actually follow people just like you. And they have little exposés on community health workers who are out doing good things in the community. And they find that that is a more effective vehicle for getting people to buy into what Save the Children does and the kinds of programs and systems that they want to try and fund and raise money for, than having pictures of kids that may be in very terrible conditions in a variety of places.
And one of the things that, I think I've turned myself on. One of the things that in my bio that I was very intentional about putting in some information about doing some malaria fundraising. And one of the things that we found out in doing that is that tying those pieces together is really important. Remember, it's not all an either or. So if you could tie in the sympathy to the systems, because what we were talking about is prevention, the individual that's affected, but also effective systems. That is, we were contributing to an organizational effort that was going to do prevention, it was going to do treatment, and it was going to make long-term impacts, because I don't know the reasons, I haven't done any academic work on it, but I know for myself as a giver, I don't want to just throw money at a problem. I want to make sure it's part of a systematic solution to a problem. And so I think we're all wanting to connect to the big value, but we also want to see that it's part of a system. So when you're, depending on the frame of the person that you're trying to convince, whether you're trying to convince them to comply or trying to convince them to fund or to do a certain kind of work, keeping in mind their motivations for participating and their previous experiences in this, you can tie multiple things together, like, yes, they might be sympathizing, but are they willing to act in a manner like, I will actually give? Because there's a difference between feeling a heart tug and actually getting involved or actually taking action. So we might all feel the heart tug, but did we actually do anything? Did we actually take action?
Good. Well, thanks, Marilyn. Why don't we transition to a break? Before we do, were there any comments or observations or criticisms or anything anyone would like to share? Okay, by the way, thank you for turning off your cell phones or having them on vibrate or telling your friends not to call during this time. I appreciate not